Well, good day, everyone, and welcome to today's session of Expert Insights. We're going to be focusing on sales today, one of my favorite topics. Everyone's familiar with the phrase, sales is the lifeblood of any effective business, right? And I think we're challenged these days by a couple of things that I would imagine you'd agree with. One is there's an advent of more and more of the sales process being done virtually. And this, of course, changes the dynamic. And how do we handle that? How do we best show up? And in addition, I think that with people becoming more sophisticated in knowing what they want and what they don't want, 2/3 of the sales process is kind of already underway before you even have a conversation with them. And so how do you add value? Well, today we have David Pearson with us, and David's answer is, I think, in large part about how we approach coaching our sales organizations. David knows a lot about this. He's led the sales organizations of some major companies, Miller Heiman, True Blue, as well as Vistage Worldwide. And today, David is now the CEO of Level 5 Selling, and he's going to share with us how he approaches all of these issues through high-end sales coaching that provides sales leaders with processes, systems, and tools to improve their coaching effectiveness and significantly improve the quality of their sales representative calls. Okay. So without further ado, I'm going to give it over to David. And I want to remind you all that our format is David will present for a little bit of time. And during that time, if you're starting to get triggered with some questions, please go ahead and throw those into the comment area and we'll get to them, I promise you, as we begin to wrap. All right. David, welcome.
Excellent. Thank you, John. Thank you for the invitation to speak with your membership. Yeah, the sales coaching is an incredibly important topic. Let me try to share some slides here. There we go. It's an incredibly important topic because it has one of the best return on investments that you can have when you have really strong coaching, that what you will get in return from as far as revenue growth and profits can be significant. Yet, this is probably one of the most talked about sales initiatives and one of the least executed upon. Pretty interesting when you think about that. And when you look at why does that happen, it's talked about all the time. We think coaching is important, yet it's very often not executed upon. And it really comes down to there are 5 dysfunctions that prevent effective coaching. So I want to share with you those dysfunctions today, but I'm also going to give you some models and things you can think about in your organization as you're putting strategies in place to grow your company. Okay, we're all focused on 3 key metrics, every one of us. And those metrics, the fact is, we're tasked with growing sales. We're tasked with increasing margins. And we're tasked with growing profits. We all are focused on those 3 things. And, sales coaching is a key way to help drive each of those. And it's a topic I'm passionate about and we're passionate about at our company. And we've actually written 4 books. I just can't hold 4 books up and still get them on the screen in this type of format, but I put 3 of the books up there. But what I want to share with you about this is that all of our system is based and steeped in research. We actually viewed over 2,500 sales calls and viewed more than we viewed more than 2,500 sales calls, and we surveyed more than 400 sales leaders. And I'm going to share with you some of the things that we found as we did that research. One of the big issues happening today when we viewed the sales calls from the 2,500 salespeople and the 2,500 calls is that 60% of those calls were scrap and waste. Now, when I talk about scrap and waste, what I mean by that is that they failed to move the buying process forward. Now, if we fail to move the buying process forward, we fail to move the selling process forward. And this is a significant issue. I ask sales leaders all the time, does this resonate with you? And most of them nod their head and say, yeah, I think it's even more than that. 50% of the presentations that we saw, or the sales calls that we saw, were actually technical presentations. Now, when I talk about technical, I'm not talking about technology or anything like that. I'm just talking about they're spending time talking about what makes their company unique, different, why their products are the best, why you should buy from them. So it's all about them and not about the customer. 50% were more presentation style than anything else. And the third is 25% of the sales calls we viewed were what we call professional visitor, or they were focused on price. So they believe that just friends are buying from friends, or it really comes down to price. And very little time was spent on things that really make a difference, understanding what's important to your customer, linking back solutions. Let me tell you some additional research findings that we had. From a sales leader perspective, sales leaders are very much focused on lagging indicators versus leading indicators. So they spend time looking at numbers that happened last month, last quarter, or they're looking at what's in the funnel, which makes sense. You look in the funnel, you want to talk about what's in there. But what's happening is they're spending a lot of time, most of their time, talking about things that have already occurred. And very little of their time is spent on those things that will actually drive future and change the trajectory of the funnel, which are really activities and behaviors. We also discovered that most coaching that's happening is reactive. Coaching is occurring. It just tends to be very reactive in nature. And it tends to not be very well done, we found. And it makes sense. We hire great salespeople. They perform well. We move them into sales leadership roles, and we really don't teach them how to coach and how to be effective at coaching. And so they really usually do whatever coaching has happened to them in the past, which tends to be reactive and not very well done also. So we need to teach our leaders how to coach. And I'm going to give you some things that will help you think about that. Those who are coaching, as I mentioned, aren't doing it very well. So when you get coaching right, some really amazing things happen. And I want to share with you a particular story that we have. And I love this one because we've got a customer that has over 1,000 salespeople. We work with small to mid-sized companies too, but this is a pretty big one. They have over 1,000 salespeople. And what they did was they took half their sales force and they really focused strategically on coaching initiatives. And that was with that group. And the other group, they focused on what strategies, some really solid strategies they had that they wanted to execute on, just not coaching related, just other strategies. And then they measured the results. They measured the results of the entire organization, and then they measured the results of the control group. They put a pretty heavy emphasis on coaching. And what they found is 8 months later, what they found is that the salespeople had an 11% higher sales rep productivity. So average revenue per rep. They saw an 8% higher gross margin. Now that's not 8 percentage points, but 8% in higher gross margin. And they saw a 50% reduction in employee turnover. This one actually really surprised me. This company had a 27% turnover rate, and it was a big pain point for them. They actually saw in the control group, they were able to reduce their turnover to 11%. So it's even greater than 50%, but it was significant. And it was one I actually wrote an article on because I was so intrigued by it. And I guess it shouldn't surprise me. You think about the fact that, millennials today, you give them a job. If you're not developing them, they move and they go somewhere else. And those managers that really engage them and develop them, they see that they stay longer. So if the payback is so great, what keeps us all from becoming masterful coaches? Why don't we all do it? The payback is huge. And it really comes down to dysfunctions that we're going to share today. Let's talk about the first dysfunction. Dysfunction number one is failure to define what quality looks like. So there's failure to define quality in general. We often pull sales leaders together, and I'm talking frontline sales leaders in the same company. We'll pull them together in a single spot, and we'll ask them to individually define what does a quality sales interaction look like in your company. And they'll write down all the things that lead to quality, and then we'll ask for them to tell what they came up with. And it's so interesting because what you'll find is you'll have results all over the board, answers all over the board. And it just surprises me because how can you ever achieve quality if your frontline leaders can't agree on what quality is? And what are they coaching to if there's no agreement on what a quality interaction looks like? What type of coaching is happening? It'll be haphazard. It won't be very well done. It's a significant issue. I like to think about it like this. What would happen if the frontline leaders at Boeing could not agree on what a quality output looked like when they were manufacturing their plane? Well, that's ridiculous. That obviously wouldn't happen. You wouldn't see it in a manufacturing environment. But so we shouldn't accept that in a sales environment either. Of course, they do have great quality processes, and we can feel comfortable flying on airplanes as a result of it. But they have, in manufacturing, you have things like Six Sigma, Kaizen, lean processes. And so what if Six Sigma standards were brought to the sales function? What would be the most critical input to achieving revenue? Well, it would really be the sales call. And you would want to know, how many sales calls did we produce? What was the quality of those calls? And you want to tell your exact specifications. What did it cost you to make them? And who's inspecting them across the line? So if you think about it that way, when we looked at these 2,500 sales calls, we really found that there were 5 levels to a sales call. And I'm going to share with you what those 5 levels are. Now, as you go from level 1 to level 5, you really need to have increased skills and knowledge to get there. From a customer perspective, you'll find that you'll see increased customer loyalty as you go from level 1 to level 5. So let's talk about what they are. The first level is a professional visitor. So a professional visitor, it believes that, and think of these as sales calls, they believe that friends buy from friends. They believe that if somebody likes them, they'll ultimately buy from them. And they never really get into any deep, meaningful issues. Now, we all know that we need to be developing relationships in order to be successful and have, be successful in sales. But we need to be getting to deep, meaningful relationships, or deep, meaningful conversations as to what's important to them. A level 2 is a price peddler. So, hey, what are you paying for your services now? I can get you a better price. That'd be a price peddler. Sometimes it's not quite that blatant. Sometimes they're trying to have a really good sales call, and the customer drags them into a price discussion, and they don't know how to get out of it and get back into a value discussion. The third is a technical teller. So a technical teller is, what do we do when we hire new salespeople? We put them through product training. We teach them all about our company and what makes us unique and different. And they can't wait to go tell everybody about it. So they go out and they tell everyone about why you're unique, why you're different, why you're better. And that's, it's I call it the spray and pray. It's a one-sided conversation predominantly. You have the product service consultant, which is the first level of professional selling. And that's where they're asking great questions of the customer. They're understanding what's important to them. They're linking back a solution. They're differentiating. They're gaining commitment. It is the first level of professional selling, and we want to get people into level 4 and 5. When you think about level 4, it is really about finding a fit for your product, service, or solution. Now, when you get to level 5, you're a value creator. And as a value creator, you're not only doing everything you'd see at level 4, but now you understand their business, how their business functions, and how you can help them as they are growing their business. You are also bringing insights to the table that will help shape the thinking of the people making the decisions. So bringing those insights is a real key aspect to be getting into level 5. Now, what we find is level 1, 2, and 3 of this are where a majority of that's the majority of the scrap and waste that occurs. So that 60% scrap and waste is mainly in level 1, 2, and 3. And the level 4 and 5 is the value creation. And our goal is to move more people out of the level 1, 2, and 3 into the level 4 and 5. I hope you're thinking right now about where your salespeople fall. When you think about your salespeople, if you think about where the predominantly your sales calls, how many of your sales calls fall in level 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5? Because I'm going to ask in a minute for you to put that into the comments as to where you think they fall. This is where I'd like you to do that. Rather than put the percent of sales calls for each level that you think occur in your organization, I'd like for you to put in the comments, where is give me the first one and the second one. We think most of our people fall on this level, and we think the second biggest group is this level. And just put them in, 2, 3, 2, 4, or whatever. Put them in the comments. I'd love to see what you all come up with and what you see. I will tell you this. Why is it so important, as you're doing that, why is it so important that we move people from level 1, 2, and 3 to level 4 and 5? Well, obviously, it makes sense. We want to get people in the value creation category. But what we have found in our research is that those companies, those people that sell predominantly level 4 and level 5 have 53% higher average revenue per rep than those that sell in level 1, 2, and 3. And on average in our business, we also track the amount of people, every quarter we track how many people are selling predominantly level 1, 2, and 3 versus 4 and 5. We have a track record of moving 18% of people from level 1, 2, and 3 over to level 4 and 5 over a 6-month time period. So it's really significant and makes a difference to focus on that. Now, I see some comments here about level 2 and level 4, level 3, level 4. I see that pretty commonly in this, where most people will say, yeah, we got a lot of people sitting in level 2 and level 3, and some that are in level 4 and a few in level 5. So those are pretty common on what I see as I ask people this similar question. Now, when you take a look at where people typically fall, I find that, in our research, we found that about 10 to 15% fall in the professional visitor category of the sales calls, 15 to 20% fell in the price seller, 40 to 50 in the technical teller, 15 to 20 in the product service consultant, and 10 to 15 in the value creator. Now, if you look at that, that's a pretty typical bell curve. And what we want to do is we want to focus on moving that bell curve. And to do that, it's really important that you've got quality defined, and that you know what are the skills and characteristics that you need to hone in order to get somebody to consistently over to level 4 and to level 5. So dysfunction number 2, coaching is reactive versus planful. So I talked about earlier, we do see the coaching is occurring, and we find that it just tends to be very reactive in nature. So I want to ask you a question. Just think about this in your mind. How many hours, how many hours do you think the average salesperson works per week? I ask this frequently. How many hours do they work? Typically, they'll tell me they work between 45 and 50 hours per week. Now, I'll say to them, how much time do you think your salespeople spend actually selling each week? How much do you think they spend actually in a selling? And I need to define what selling is. Selling is defined as any time spent with a customer uncovering some sort of gap from where they are today to where they want to be. And so that means that we can take being on the golf course for 4 hours out. Maybe some of it is uncovering a gap, but it's really that time you spend in true uncovering and trying to understand a gap. Typical salesperson spends about 15% of their time selling, and it's about 5 to 8 hours per week. So we see salespeople working 45 to 50 hours a week as a working time, 5 to 8 actually selling. It's really important we make the most out of that particular time. Now you think about this, 5 to 8 hours a week selling, 60% of the sales calls are scrap and waste. Wow, if we can impact that, what a significant difference we're going to make. Now, I want to jump to the sales leader side. How much time do you think the average sales leader spends coaching their team? Well, when we ask sales leaders this, they'll typically tell us, oh, quite a lot of my time. I'd say 40, 50% is a pretty common thing you'll hear people say. And then I'll say, well, let me define coaching for you. What if it's defined as proactive time planned, that you have planned, where you're coaching salespeople to help them improve their skills, focusing really on leveraging their strengths and looking at areas that we can help them develop. How much time do you spend in that mode? And they think about it, and when we look at it, it actually comes out to about often 10 to 15% of their time is actually spent in true coaching time. So what's interesting is I don't know many sales leaders who have a lot of extra time available. So the key here is that we are not trying to throw more on their plate by coaching. We're actually trying to make them more effective with the time that they have. And when you do that, that's when you see the results. Now, what we do, you can use whatever you like, but what we work with clients on is really developing a coaching planner, besides teaching them how to coach. But every 90 days, sales leaders will put together a plan for each of their salespeople. And they'll take a look at their salespeople, and they'll each their individual salespeople. It doesn't take very long to do. And they'll look at the predominant level of selling of each of these people. So this person's Susan's predominantly a level 1 seller. We'll take a look at some things with time management, which is, you don't want to spend equal time coaching everybody. You want to figure out where you can get your best return on investment. You'll spend more time coaching some versus others, which makes complete sense. So we talk about how you prioritize your time for coaching and where you should be spending your time. But what it comes down to here is really defining what are the 2 key areas of strength that individual has, because we really want to leverage their strengths. And then we want to focus on the 3 areas of development that we have. And what's it going to take to get Susan, who's a level 1 seller now, up into a level 4 and 5? What are the key skills that we're going to need to develop in Susan to get there? And we will look at 3 things that we're going to focus on over the course of the quarter to help improve and coach her to get better. And then we can add more on in the next quarter. So whatever system you use, really having a plan for the key areas of development is important. Let's talk about dysfunction number 3, allowing distractions to decrease your coaching time. I'll tell you, I used to lead a very large sales organization. We had about 1,000 salespeople out in the organization. We had a lot of operational leaders. And we did something that was a time study, because people said, oh, I don't have time for this. We're so busy. And I thought, well, I want to find out what is keeping them so busy. So we ran a time study, and we had them keep track of their time in certain categories over the course of 2 weeks. Oh, I got these results back, and I was actually, as a sales leader, shocked by the results. Because what was actually keeping them from being out in the field more with their team was the fact that the corporate office was having all kinds of conference calls that they were being invited to and required to be a part of, and all kinds of different topics, important stuff, but it was being done all throughout the day and distracting them from doing what their job is, which is helping to drive sales, coach people, and make them better. So when I saw it, I was so surprised. I went back and said, came back in the corporate office and I said, we're going to actually cut all these calls and they can only be done during these particular time slots. And we were working through the whole country, but they had to be done during certain time slots. So we weren't distracting them throughout the day. Well, I'll tell you, the whole corporate office was up in arms about it and the field was cheering about it because they wanted to be freed up at the time. And I did not know that they were being distracted that much by that many calls. So doing a time study, and if you do a time study, really do it over the course of a couple of weeks, because no single week is the same, but over a couple of weeks, you can get a pretty good idea of what's really taking people's time. But the key is when you want to put a coaching initiative in place, looking at the distractions that will prevent them from being effective at coaching or prevent them from actually doing the coaching is important. Dysfunction number 4 is coaching by telling versus asking. Many coaches will tell people, hey, this is what I want you to do. Here's what you need to do differently next time. And they can have great advice. But those coaches that make that transition from telling to asking are far more effective and they drive incredible performance. It's about asking the right questions. It's about getting people to really uncover where they can develop themselves. I'll tell you, I had a coach and a leader of mine for several years. And it was at the time of my career where I grew the most. And this particular leader, we would set the strategy together. We'd look at the vision, where we were going to go. We would set the strategy. We decide where we're going to go. And then it was my job to now come back and say, okay, how are we going to do that? How are we going to achieve it? And I'd come back to him with a plan. He never came in and said, David, this is what I want you to do. Do this, do this, do this. What he did was he asked me very good and pointed questions throughout our meetings together. And I'll tell you, he would uncover any hole or any gap that I had through questions. And when I say he would uncover it, I would realize I had a goal. I had a hole based on the way that he asked me questions. And when I did that, I'd feel like, oh, I missed that. I should have thought about that. And I would go and get better. And he would guide me and help me with that. What an incredible experience to have somebody that would do that. When I would go to meet with him, I would spend so much time preparing because I knew he was going to ask me really good questions and make me think. He challenged me. Now, we take a look at leaders, and we have a sales leader model. So we have 5 levels of a quality sales call. We have 5 levels of a great leader. So let's talk about them. When you take a look at this, the first one is a buddy. And a buddy, they believe that friendship breeds success. If my team likes me, they'll perform for me. A buddy believes that feedback will harm the friendship and hurt performance. And they can often be slow to let underperformers go because, after all, they're friends with them. When you go to level 2, the parent, you have a parent is really, they're now providing suggestions and encouragement to their team. They're very overprotective, just as a parent is with their children. Kind of that my baby isn't ugly type of syndrome. So few actions in an organization like this can be taken without the parent's permission. So they're really controlling of what happens. So they want to have give the guidance and just like a parent would. And they create a culture of dependency. One thing that you see in an organization that's led by parents is when someone underperforms, the parent will often do the job of that individual rather than letting them go. The third is the boss. And the boss is all about compliance with the rules. They dictate how the job should be done, and they expect little to no variation to how that is done. So it's really a do as you're told type of environment. They use process to a fault, and they often micromanage their team. And each of the interactions happen with their team. Now we get to level 4, similar to our other level system. This is really the first level of professional coaching. But when they get to level 4, this is the expert coach. And the expert coach is highly knowledgeable. and they provide excellent feedback to their team members. But they spend about 80% of their time telling the team member what to do, and 20% of their time asking questions. So it's very heavily focused on a one way. Let me tell you what you need to do. And they're providing great advice. But when we do this, we fail to allow people to self-discover. And this is common among coaches. We see this quite a bit. Now, when you get to the top level, the partner, this is where the leader is a true performance partner. They ask great questions. They guide their team to understand their top strengths. They guide the team to understand where they need help, or their individuals where they need help. And it's a process that we're talking about here. Is the process of self-discovery is so important. The more we can discover on our own where we need help, the more likely we are to buy into that change and make that change effective. So becoming a partner is a real key. Now, very similar to what I asked you before, I'd love to hear your comments. I want you to think of your current leader and what level they are, and put in the comments if you wouldn't mind. What level is the current leader that you have today? But I know a lot of you are CEOs. You may be thinking of someone on the board, but if you can also think about a past leader. Who's somebody you've worked with before, and what level were they? I can tell you I've worked with several of these different types of leaders before. I've worked with a boss. I've worked with a partner. I've worked with the expert coach, and I see very different results on each of them. Our goal is to get our leaders moving from level 1, 2, and 3 to 4 and 5. It's interesting when you think about the buddy. You might see this a lot where you have a sales organization and you have you took somebody in that organization who was an individual contributor and moved them up to the leader. So they used to be a peer with their people, and now they're actually leading them. And you'll see buddy quite a bit in that type of environment. The fact that you become knowledgeable about what type of leader you are, and for you CEOs, what type of leader is your sales leader, and help guide them to become more the level 4 and 5. You'll see some really strong results as a result of it. I've had a buddy in the past. Some of you had a parent in the past. Not uncommon. We've had, it falls into all of them. Thanks for the comments in the comments section. Let's go to dysfunction number 5, coaching overload. This happens all the time. The coach will come back and go, well, here, you need to work on this and this and this and this. And they give them several things that they need to do. And they might be giving great advice and great comments, but they're giving them so many. And that could be a real challenge. I think about this. When you go, if any of you golf, if I go to the golf course and the golf pro gives me 10 things to work on, and they're all valid things that I need to work on, but they give me 10 things to work on, I will fail at all of them. I will not do any of them well. You give me 1 or 2 things to work on, I'll practice over and over and over again until I master it. And once I mastered it, you can then add on. You can add on more. And that is the same thing that we need to be thinking about as we're coaching our team. What are the top 2 to 3 things that we can work on over the course of the quarter? And let's focus on those. Make sure that we've got them. They bought in. We helped guide them to the fact they needed those things, and we know they need them. We're going to guide them and help them to get there over the course of the quarter. And as we work on it, at the end of the quarter, we'll redo our plans and we'll think of something new for the next 90 days that's going to help continue to improve and drive those level 4 and 5 calls. Now, there's so much outside research as to why coaching is something we should all be focusing on and why it's so incredibly important. But there are a couple here that I thought I'd share with you. We know that it'll increase revenue. We know that it'll accelerate performance. And we know that it will reduce turnover. But here's some great stats for you. I love this. McKinsey. We all know McKinsey. They said that by targeting specific skills and enforcing the use of those skills with concrete goals, sales leaders are able to raise rep productivity by 25% within 18 months. Accelerate performance. This was written in the Harvard Business Review. It was actually done by the Sales Executive Council. And it says the real payoff from coaching lies among the middle 60%, those your core performers, and moving that over into the to help that 60% improve can improve performance by up to 19%. And the third is by Gallup. I love this one by Gallup because I know turnover is such a hot topic for so many today, but they found that it takes a 20% increase in pay to lure somebody away from a manager who is truly engaging them. Wow. Especially today with all the turnover happening. If we can engage people properly, help them professionally grow, it takes a lot more for them to leave the company. And that's why you see turnover rates reduce. So those are the 5 dysfunctions. I have 2 things I want to share with you. If you are interested at all, I have a copy of our level 5 selling book. It goes into more detail than, of course, than what I talked about today. If you're interested in receiving one, please feel free to email me at david@level5selling.com, and I'll be happy to get you a copy of that book. And the second is that sales leaders, if you would like a free assessment, or CEOs, if you'd like a free assessment of your sales force, you can let me know. We can schedule a 45-minute briefing, and we can assess I can help you assess your sales force and think about it, give you some thoughts on how you can carry forward. So feel free, if you just drop me a note at david@level5selling, we'd be happy to jump in and have a conversation with you. So John, I'll bring you back. I'd like to open up to questions.
There we go. Awesome, David. I think you've really laid out the root causes of, well, let's put it, let me before I even say that, I think there's what you've presented allows people to really reflect and see where they are on that continuum as a leader, as a coach. They can see where their people are and clearly see the advantage of maybe beginning to refine their approach. And I guess my feeling would be that some of them might be thinking, all right, given my plate is really full right now, and this is going to take more time or an investment on my part. Probably they're thinking, how long is this actually going to take to move somebody from like level 1 to level 2 or to the middle, like you're describing is a great place to kind of get to, so you can start launching into level 4 and 5. So what's that look like in terms of time investment?
Well, when we track regularly how many people fall on each of the different levels. And really what we're trying to do is take the 1, 2s, and 3s and get them over to 4 and 5. And usually in about 6 months, we're able to move, and it can range, but we're able to move about 18% on average over into that particular level. When we work with customers, we define where they should spend their time, because there's two mistakes coaches make regularly. They spend equal time with everybody, and they hang on to people they shouldn't be hanging on to. So we help them identify that, and I think it's important to think through that, because if you're going to spend time with certain people where you can move the needle even more.
Yeah,
and get more.
It sounds like you could, by investing and doing the right things during that 6 months, not only can you move the needle, but you can also show yourself who are the people who are benefiting by it and you're benefiting by investing in, right? And who are the people who are just not responding, so that you can make a definitive decision about whether to keep them or not. Would that be fair?
That's very fair.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So we're all kind of like creatures of habit in a way. We, even though the world is changing, there's probably a reticence in all of us to make a change, right? Whether we're talking about the sales leader or the sales force. But let's talk about the sales force itself. How do we help them move into this new way of being and doing?
Well, I think one of the things that I found that works well is, once you've defined what that quality is, and you, whether you use our model or you use your own model, define what that quality is and make sure everybody in the company knows what that is.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'll tell you what happens when you look at those. So, for example, in our 5 levels, it's really for every sales call. I've had situations where I'll get off a call, and I'd like to think I'm a level 4 and 5 seller usually, but I'll get off a call and I go, that was a level 3 call. And that, what am I doing? Where did I go wrong? I'm able to actually analyze it and think about it. John, I think that self-reflection, that self-assessment is so key. It's key for me. And you can just think about it and think about where you went wrong and what you could do differently. So making sure people in the company know what really does quality look like and where are we trying to go and how are we going to help you to get there. I think that's a foundation that you need to think about.
So, I wonder if you could share a little bit more about what some companies have come up with as a definition for what does that quality sales interaction look like. And it's very, you showed the airplane, and of course we're thinking about, quality in a different way there than we are here in this sales interaction. Like, what is it? Yeah, I would think this becomes very, very pivotal to the whole thing, right? So what kind of ingredients, if you will, have some companies that are quite effective at with their redefining of quality? What did they come up with?
So the question is, what did they come up with for quality?
Yeah,
for them.
Well, that defines that quality sales interaction. Yeah.
Yeah, John, I'm more, I see, because I work with companies that put our system in place. They use our 5 levels.
Okay.
And so other companies, that they have to create quality on their own, and they can certainly do that. I do see a lot of companies that do focus on how, what types of things can they provide to their team so that they can truly add value and bring insights to their customer. So I've seen customers that have put a big energy and emphasis on that. I think it's funny, if you're selling into, to a publicly held company, what a beautiful thing. You can go into a publicly held company and pull up their 10K. And the 10K has a section there called risk factors. And you can read down on those risk factors and you can see big areas where that company needs help, what they've defined as their risk, and link where you might be able to help them to achieve it. So I've seen companies, and I know I'm not quite answering the question around the quality because I see most people will use our system for it, but how they go about really trying to add value and drive their team to value is something I see more people kind of trying to get their heads around.
And what I just heard in that description was going back to identifying the gap. In this case, they use the beginning. They use the description of the risks that company was up against, and then I hear kind of verifying whether that is truly critical to them to solve.
Yeah, usually it's funny when you read those risk factors on the 10K of a company. When you start talking to the leaders of the company, they'll often think you've been sitting in their boardroom listening to their conversations. I mean, how much you know about what's going on. And what's interesting is the company you're selling into doesn't have to be a publicly held company. There might be others that are in that space that are publicly held, and you can go look up that information. That's just one way you can do it. The other way you can do it is you can think about what about other customers we have that are similar to them. What are things that really made a big difference that maybe this company's not thinking about, and being able to bring those insights in are key.
Yeah, you said that really selling is about identifying that gap, right? So is that a part of defining whether you're having a quality sales interaction? Like, how much time did you spend on that? Did you address that with the client? Those kinds of things.
Yeah. That actually is the answer to your first question. Is that that's true? It's getting away from the, hey, let me tell you why we're the best at what we do, and uncovering the gap and understanding what's important. And look, there's 2 ways. You can uncover the gap and specifically to find a fit for your product, service, solution, or you can uncover the gap and think about how you can add to it and really bring insights that help them think differently. That is the key. We need to get our people into understanding. You kind of kicked off earlier, John, in the start of this conversation, that the reality is people making buying decisions are 2/3 of the way through their buying process before they ever engage with us. Well, they already know if we give them a product presentation or why we're unique and why we're different, they already know that. They probably already researched it. How do we bring and add value in the process?
So what would be, in addition to anything that we've been talking about, what would be another way of adding value where we're not just kind of like reiterating or rehashing what they already are aware of, if you will?
Yeah, we have to understand what they're trying to accomplish. What are they trying to accomplish? What are they trying to fix? What are they trying to avoid? What's happening in their world? And we have to go beyond just, the hey, what's keeping you awake at night types of questions. We have to go beyond that. We have to understand, how are they growing their business? What are they focusing on to grow their customers and to really grow their business? And how can I help them in achieving that? And what types of things can I bring to them that maybe they haven't considered or thought about? So business acumen becomes really important in that process.
Business acumen, I absolutely agree. Doing that homework, like you were just describing, ahead of time when you can. And the other thing that I think what you're sharing at this moment underscores is the importance of making that shift in coaching from telling to asking, because everything you just talked about was a skill, developing a skill for asking and drawing out of the prospect or the client, not only the need, but what would in fact take a solution to another level, right? So it's really, it's all intertwined, it sounds like.
It all comes down to asking great questions, doesn't it? You think about understanding your customer, understanding their world, the questions you're asking, and the same when you're a leader. And John, even in REF as leading a group, it's about asking questions of the CEOs and making them think, and exactly. It's the same thing, right?
Exactly, absolutely. The other thing I was struck by, please, if you have questions that were not, by the way, the audience here, if you have questions that we're not yet covering the answers to, please throw them into the comment area, and we're happy to pass those on to David. When you were talking about the 5 levels of the great leader, one of the things that was occurring to me was how parallel it is to an article I read in Harvard Business Review about delegation. And they were making the argument that delegation is one of the pieces that's important about effective delegation is knowing who you are delegating to. And that the first level of delegation is to someone who doesn't have much experience. And so as a result of that, you're doing a little bit more hand-holding, almost like the parent or the boss in your model, right? And the next level is where actually the person has got some skill, understands, and now you can become a collaborator with them. And then the third level, and by the way, that would be, maybe the boss and the expert coach in your model. And the third level is where that person has really, really developed some expertise. I think that was described by how your previous mentor would kind of work out the goal with you, but then you would come up with the plan. And I think this is a nice parallel. What are your thoughts?
I haven't thought about it that way before, but I like that article. It's true. You're going to delegate. You got to think about, well, where's the level of person where I'm delegating? Are they able to, are they already the do they have the ability to add value and maybe make it better and think about it, or is it something new to them?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a very, very interesting parallel that you're making. But I do see it from a partner standpoint of really asking the questions and, here's where we want to go. Here's
Mm-hmm.
what we want to accomplish
Mm-hmm.
together. Talking about how you think we get there. And, you put the plan on how to get there. And then I'll ask you really great questions to help tighten it up and make sure we have it right.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's I think when I think about it, kind of progressing to that level, what I see is kind of greater freedom, greater power, greater freedom for the sales leader, because they don't have that yoke on their back trying to carry the entire weight, right? And yet at the same time, it's also empowering and progressing to ultimately collaboration, which is what I was the essence of the partner kind of role. So it's exciting to think that we can evolve in that way, right? That's what I see here as kind of a progression that is really about evolution, the evolution of that sales leader.
It is an evolution. Yeah. It's evolution of the sales people too. When you think about in the 5-level model, it's like, how do we get our salespeople to level 4 and 5, and they know what it takes to get there, and they know what the plan is to get there, and how do we get our sales leaders to effectively coach? And if everybody understands these 2 models, and you're all striving towards achieving it, that's where you start seeing the difference.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. So let me just ask you. You shared a little bit in terms of results. In order to stimulate change, we all need to have a sense of what can we get from it. So, what do you see from your own experience as the results of you moving things more to the middle, and then from the middle to the upper levels for both the sales folks and sales leaders? I think maybe you start with the sales leader, because that's who we're talking to in a way here. We're in some ways engaging the audience in kind of elevating things, and so what's in it for them, really, in your experience?
Well, first, I think, John, the self-awareness is really important. You might take a look at that level 5 sales leader and say, you know what, I am a parent, or I am a boss. And what type of outcome happens as a result of that? Hey, I have to tell you, the boss that I worked for many years, that was, very, they're very process micromanagement. You do it my way. You do it the way I tell you to do it. Highly effective. I mean, this guy did well. Now, did he have a lot of challenges along the way? Yes, there were quite a few challenges along the way, and big cultural challenges. And when you start running into, you start running into an economy like we are today, and a workplace where we are today, that can become very dangerous. So I think the first is self-awareness of where you are.
Mm-hmm.
And then thinking about how would you start striving to get into the level 4 and 5, and what type of things would you do differently? I think that's a really key aspect in figuring out how to get to those higher levels. So what does it mean for you? Well, those that we track it. I said the boss was highly effective, but I've seen those that the boss was highly effective in this particular case. A lot of times it's not. But those that get up into level 4 and level 5, especially in level 5, you really do see differences in how fast they're able to get people to move up and perform at higher levels. The fact is that when we can self-discover it, things that we need to work on, we will improve on it so much faster and so much better, and we can guide them than we would otherwise. So what are the benefits? Greater performance, faster improvements in the way that they perform, lower turnover. No doubt about it, lower turnover as a result of it. It's worth it taking time to do it and to be getting there.
Yeah. You know what I love? I love that you started with on that self-awareness with what is the impact of how I'm showing up right now? Right.
Yes.
And not making it right or wrong. Right. But looking at it in terms of maybe like what's working and what's not working. What is the gain I get from showing up like this, and what is the cost I get from showing up like this, right? Because without us taking that honest moment to self-reflect, as you said, sometimes we don't have the motivation to make the change. We go, okay, well, what he's describing sounds pretty good. However, I got all this other stuff to take care of, right?
That's right.
So I love that, and I would invite everyone to just take that moment to do that little bit of self-assessment and see, really, is this working or is it not working? And if it's not working, well, this is the thing. This is a principle in coaching, isn't it? If it's not working, then we ask ourselves or the person that we're coaching, what do you want to do about that?
Right. You're a great coach, John. I like that. How are we showing up, and what can we be doing differently, and what's the impact we have?
Yeah.
Great comment.
Well, David, I think we're at that time when we're wrapping up, and wondering if there's anything else as a result of our conversation or any light bulbs that have gone off for you that you would like to further share in wrapping up here.
Well, John, thanks for that question. Just appreciate being invited to talk to the group, and anything I can do to help, don't hesitate to reach out. We've got a number of books out, and we help companies with this all the time. So don't hesitate to reach out. I'd love to get you a copy of the Level 5 Selling book if you're interested. And just remember, it's David at Level 5.
You can see where it will go.
Of course, John. You get the whole trilogy.
Thank you. All right, David. Pleasure. On a personal note, I wish you the best. David's youngest daughter is now started at CU in Boulder, and for all the parents out there who have their children doing something like that or have done it, we can all celebrate with him and commiserate with him.
Commiserate. Thank you. I need it. Thanks, John.
All right, David. Bye-bye now.
All right. Take care. Have a good weekend.
You too.